Hello my friends and welcome back to the studio. David Kessler here. Today I want to address a viewer's question about how to adequately finish off the edges of your canvas once your painting is complete. Now there's a couple of different options that you have. One is that you can take the image and wrap the image around the painting so that it continues around the edge. Another one is to paint these edges a color. That's the option that I choose. I like the look of the image wrapping around the edge, but for me, I paint so quickly, I don't have time to get the edge painted around there. So I paint mine a color. Mine is black. What I'd like to emphasize is you spend a lot of time working on the painting and trying to get beauty and everything in there to have a high quality image. And I want you to finish these edges off so that they look professional as well. So I'm going to give you some tips that I've kind of learned the hard way on over the years. Now you have to also think about consistency a little bit on this, because I think it's important that all my paintings get finished the same way on the edge. I only use this 1.5 inch deep gallery wrap canvas. That's my standard. So it doesn't have to be framed, and I just paint these edges black. It looks very consistent and very professional in its application. Now you don't have to use black, you can use other colors. I would recommend, however, that you stick with kind of a gray to dark gray or black. I've seen people leave these edges natural canvas. I've seen people do all sorts of different colors, but what I would say is pick an approach and use that for all your canvases, so when you put a show up or an exhibition, your paintings look consistent one from the other, and they look very professional, so that they look as good as the time that you put in creating the image on the front. All right. Now, some people will take these edges before they begin their painting and mask those off with some sort of an artist tape or paint masking tape. That's fine. If you want to do that, that keeps these edges clean. I don't worry too much about that because, to be honest with you, the process of me making a painting is fairly messy. And I want some of that to come across in the final product. So if I have paint or gesso rolled up over the edge, for me it's just part of the way the painting is made, and gives the viewer a little bit of insight as to how that's made without it being too crisp and clean on the edges. I really don't care about that, but that's up to you. You may really care about that and want these to be as clean as possible, and you might want to skim off that paint once you finish. It's whatever works for you. Now with regard to brushes, typically I use these brushes for my paintings, which are natural bristle brushes. Now these have a very rough edge. If I tried to use this to paint this edge, number one, this brush is too large, and number two, this is not going to give me a good finished edge. I couldn't imagine trying to work an edge with this brush because it's too big and the bristles are too rough at the end. I would recommend, a nylon bristle brush, which is what this is. This is a 1 inch watercolor brush. It's very flexible. You see how flexible that is? That makes it really easy for me to come in here and run a bead of paint down the edge of the canvas. So I highly recommend no bigger than 1.5 inch brush, and some kind of a flexible nylon bristles are very helpful for you. The other thing with regard to the paint is don't use a heavy body paint unless you thin it down with water or an additive prior to using it, because it'll be too thick, and what you'll find is you won't be able to run a bead down the edge of the painting because the paint's too thick. Now, I use soft body paint for this. I learned this lesson really hard over many years of having sloppy edges, and I couldn't figure out why the edges were so sloppy. It's because I was using my regular heavy body paint that I use for my paintings. And once I experimented with this and found the soft body paint, which is more fluid, as you can probably see, you can pour it out, it's pourable, right? Then my edges immediately got better. So think about that. A soft body paint and a nylon bristle brush that's very flexible so that you can easily put this paint on here. All right, so let's get to it. All right, here we go. And one of the things I want you to look at here is that I use a system of wood strips against my wall. And I use these screws to hold my canvases. So this gives me some space off the wall that makes it easy for me to paint these canvas edges. Now you see I've got this little gap here between my edge and the wall. It makes it really, really easy to get in here and paint it. And then I can put this on here, paint this edge, turn it, paint the other edge, and turn it all around so that I never have to handle the wet edges. This is much easier, gives you a very stable base, much easier than trying to hold it in your hand and paint it. The other thing I would say about this, if you don't have this kind of setup, don't worry. If you have a wooden easel, it's easy enough to take some screws like I have here, screw those into your wooden easel, turn it as upright as possible, and then you have the same system, right? Very easy to keep it in line. So let's take a look at the way I do it. I just get a little paint here on my brush, and the first thing I do is kind of get these edges, right? I try to put the paint in these edges like this, and then I work the paint across the back, just parallel to the edge. It's not rocket science here, right? It's just pretty simple. I just keep putting a little paint on it, and come in here and do this other edge, right? Easy peasy. Make sure I paint a little bit on that back edge, right? So that when you put it on the wall, you don't get any white edge showing there. So I paint it, you know, within about 1/4 of an inch or so of that front edge, right? Then I get plenty of paint on my brush. This is just like, if you've ever painted your house, this is just like painting wood trim in your house. You just get a little paint on there. Let's get this edge down here. You get a little paint on this edge, right, and you just run that bead of paint all the way down. Right, when you run out of paint on there, then I stop, kind of smooth it out, dip in for some more paint, and run it down the edge. And then smooth it all the way out. This edge is pretty rough right here. And you're good to go. That's all there is to it. There, now see how easy that was? It's a piece of cake. It just takes a few minutes, but you have to arm yourself with the correct tools. Soft body paint, flexible nylon brush that's not too wide. Makes it really easy to get that done. If you have to hold it in your hand, do that. If you can put it on an easel to do that, then do that. If you have a wooden easel, like I said, you know, put those screws in there and hang it on there. That way you can do all 4 edges without having to sit it down. Makes it a lot easier when you're trying to do the edges, right? And whatever color you determine to use that works for you, do that. You know, if you want to wrap the image around, that works for you, then do that. It's whatever works for you. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Share this with your friends if it was helpful for you. And I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.